Hello friends, welcome to Spiritism for All, and today we will finish the study of this excellent book, Behind the Scenes of Obsession. It's the first part of the last chapter, Redemptive Commitments. The spiritual author is Manoel Philomeno de Miranda, and the medium is Divaldo Pereira Franco. This book, Behind the Scenes of Obsession, in Portuguese, Nos Bastidores da Obsessão, was the first book psychographed by Divaldo Pereira Franco from the author Manoel Philomeno de Miranda, the Spirit. Let's start. The activities absorbed us, and the time passed generously, allowing us to take advantage of the lessons, gems that we incorporated into our Spiritist's undying patrimony. The Suarez family had organized a simple reception for Sunday afternoon when Adalberto, overjoyed with Mariana's birthday, would assume the commitment of the engagement, asking Mr. Mateus for her hand. The author is explaining that Adalberto and Mariana wanted to be engaged in a marriage, and Adalberto would ask Mariana's father the permission to marry her. It was natural, therefore, that we gathered together in their home, participating in the just joys that came as a divine response to earthly pains. The father of the family, after 5 months of rest and medical assistance at home, was recovering wonderfully. He was already able to get to his feet, aided by his daughters and supported by a cane with prospects for a new recovery in the near future. The organic rebalancing, however, was of little significance, considering the real changes operated within it. If his past was marked by neglect and disregard for duties, it's fair to recognize his effort to demonstrate the regret that afflicted him. He had become sweet and treated his family with the necessary affection. He lamented the loss of time and his advanced age, which could not allow him to retrace the path taken towards rehabilitation. The gospel, as it penetrated his mind, had torn out bright visions of light and life. He was moved when, in intimate lectures, he referred to the consolations he had so belatedly managed to accept. Although he was unaware of other more enlightening reports of the dramas that shook the foundations of his home, he found in reincarnation an answer to the inner anguish and rebellions, which had tormented him so much throughout his life. He said he was dominated for almost all the years of his life by death-hatred, which, similar to a percussion instrument, echoed inwardly, tearing him inexorably. However, time gave him an opportunity for intimate recomposition, a better view of things and events, and an inner feeling of preparations for departure. He no longer feared discarnation. The knowledge of Spiritism had killed his fear of death. In turn, Adalberto, who came from the interior of the state and lived in a boarding house without the support of a secure and noble faith that allowed himself to be led by a life of frivolities common to those of his age, also began to transform himself internally, immensely fascinated by the knowledge of the doctrine of the spirits. The young man, who had already stored up enough quantity of pleasures in the experiences of frivolity, was ardent and passionate. Although he was not a bearer of culture, he possessed a lucid intellectual training. He started to study Allan Kardec's codification, and later he began to study the mediumistic novels. The logic of reincarnation and the programming of destinies, following a closely drawn script with the natural concessions to the free will of each one, was for him a special topic of conversation. Understanding the responsibilities of life, he hurried to abandon his old habits, and, faced with the misfortunes that turned into blessings in the Soares home, he approached the family since Mariana's illness and almost became the son of the male gender that was missing from that household. His vigorous hands and arms became countless times the efficient help to the sick old man, and his promptness and generosity were levers of salvation on the occasion of the various events. Believing that he needed to build his own home, he decided to marry Mariana, to whom he was strongly linked by love. The girl's 17th birthday was an opportune occasion for the official engagement of the betrothal, which was to culminate in marriage as soon as they were in a position to do so. Thus, the modest and honorable family invited the few friends to the official event, which had been the reason for everyone's joy since the previous days. We went to Petitinga, Moraes and us. Meeting the Soares family with a few guests, plus Adalberto and his father, who had come for the occasion. After the request made by him to Mariana's father, the rings representing the commitment were presented, and a simple and well-kept snack was served. The smiles spoke of emotions of that evening. Marta and Mariana, Dona Rosa and the other daughters looked like happy and bubbly children. Mr. Mateus, quite happy, had, however, his face veiled by a discreet sadness. It was because he remembered the past and felt unable to reconstruct it. In turn, I remembered the events that took place there and considered the mercy of God in his subtleties and infinite wisdom, which escape us and which we cannot readily understand. The miracle of pain produced the blessing of mercy of the union of all. Adalberto, who was very emotional, plotting plans for the future, considered his position as a spiritist and asked Petitinga what religious solemnity there should be on the occasion of his partnership with Mariana, of his marriage. He understood that it would not be lawful to submit to a sacramental act of the Roman Church in view of the behavior of the beneficiaries of that faith, which was very far from the teachings and practices of the true Christianity, which is Spiritism. Wouldn't it be fair, however, that there was some ceremony in Spiritism drawn up in the evangelical lessons to commemorate the great events of life? He inquired, interested. Petitinga, prudent and lucid, smiled and clarified. It was by adopting the practices of paganism in the twilight that the nascent Christianity suffered the adulterations that resulted in its gradual extinction. In today's external practices and luxurious worship, what do we find in the living and pure lessons of Christ? Where and when did we see Jesus doing such acts? Many refer to the scene of the Lord's baptism by John as being the tacit acceptance and agreement of a service. This, however, was not what happened. Allowing himself to be identified by the signs of the prophecies and by the ancient sayings that would characterize the Messiah, the Saint, he allowed himself to receive from John, in front of everyone, that act, so that it would be known that he was the expected one, a phenomenon confirmed by all they heard at that moment when a voice cried, "This is my beloved Son, in whom I am well pleased." As the evangelists noted, and John adds, "He is the Son of God," defining him as the Messiah, never however baptized. In all his life we do not see him in collusion with those who feed on ignorance and allow themselves to abuse the faith for their own benefit. Gentle and sober, he made a brief silence, in which his pale eyes lit up, and then continued. Spiritism is the doctrine of Jesus, in spirit and truth, without formulas or rites, without appearances or representatives, without ministers. It is the religion of love and truth, in which everyone is responsible for their own acts, responding for them according to their knowledge of immortality of duties. It is the religion of philosophy, the philosophy of science, and the science of religion, as Viana de Carvalho preached in our house, with just reasons. It does not base itself on statements that are outside to the good news brought by Jesus, and everything that the spirits informed to the missionary Allan Kardec is based on the Gospels. Some free opponents say the spirits brought nothing new, and I allow myself to ask, repeating the ancient philosopher, what's new under the sun? Novelty is also a sign of lightness. What seems new to us is an update of what was happening, and we ignore it. Spirits have always communicated and spoke of rebirth, of the laws of cause and effect, known from very remote civilizations under the Sanskrit designation of karma. At all times we find the so-called dead speaking to the so-called living. What the sages achieved in these times was to verify the legitimacy of the post-mortem existence and prove the previous existence of the spirit before the body, with the consequent survival after the death of the body. Allan Kardec, the envoy for modern times, had the incomparable merit of codifying the scattered teachings, giving them a philosophical order, extracting the moral and eternal meaning from the continuous lessons of the immortals. Endowed with rare faculties of intelligence and reason, embraced by the legion of benefactors and strongly inspired by them, he proposed questions of knowledge, inquired about matters not properly clarified so far. There is, however, not a single item in the entire codification that's not based on the teachings of Christ, now universally confirmed by the spirits. The Master himself, in his assertion of the Counselor's promise, informed clearly and concisely that the Paraclete would say much more than he had said. And giving better emphasis to the teachings, he concluded, "No, there is no external cult in Spiritism, and if there were, we would have his death announced soon. Being the Spiritist doctrine, it revives Christianity, let us repeat, in spirit and in truth." And could we not, returned interested Adalberto, to formulate a prayer of thanksgiving in such moments? Yes, pray we can do it, however, in the intimacy of hearts, in the silence of the room. A public prayer always requires someone better trained, easy to speak, and inspired. Thus, we will transfer to someone else what we are supposed to do. And since praying is bathing in light and penetrating with peace through the resulting communion with heaven, we must do it ourselves, each one in particular. For those committed to do so, it's very well. That the betrothed perform it in the intimacy of the bedroom, it is a real necessity. That the birthday ones produce it on the altar of their souls, it's very fair. But let us avoid today that our emotion and our festivity be transformed tomorrow into an external cult that we have started. Each one of us here present must be in silent prayer with good thoughts, in an attitude of prayer for the sobriety of actions, through the moral and fraternal respect that we all owe to one another. Spiritism is the religion that reconnects, allows us redundancy, the creature to the Creator inwardly. May we have more attitudes than words. The final sentence, enunciated with a touch of good humor, made us all smile, thus ending the wonderful lesson that the groom had managed to motivate. We all said goodbye, joyful and meditative as to our spiritual responsibilities in relation to ourselves, to our neighbor, and to the future. Our actions make a school, and our school can turn through our negligence into a bad one. That night, we learned from the mentor Saturnino, during the physical rest and using the astral projection of our souls, when we were gathered at the headquarters of the União Espírita Baiana for a meeting provoked by the instructors. There we met Petitinga, we, the medium Moraes, the Soares family, represented by Dona Rosa, Mr. Mateus, Marta and Mariana, Adalberto, Ana Maria, and the spiritual benefactors. Some of the incarnate ones were more lucid, others less accustomed to incursions to the spirit world for such a purpose seemed restless sleepwalkers, after receiving healing blessings, everyone got more peaceful. The meeting was presided by Brother Glaucus, the noble mentor who had commanded the aid and studies from the amphitheater, incorporated into the work of disobsession of the Suarez family, attending a superior determination. After a beautiful prayer and very high speech, he explained the aims and objectives of the meeting. He ended he ended his term of stay among us for that job. The services proceeded with the expected success. It was necessary, however, to define roadmaps for the future. First aid preparations were finalized for the various discarnate ones involved in the dramas of the characters present there. To be continued. We divided into videos in order not to get so long videos. Thank you very much for watching us. If you like this video, please leave us your like, share with your friends, leave us your comments, and subscribe in the channel just to help us to grow. Thank you very much.